For more than 30 years, a single block of marble stood in the workyard behind the Cathedral of Florence. It was almost 17 feet tall, cut from the mountains at Carrara and dragged across Tuscany at enormous cost, and by the time most people walked past it, it was considered ruined. In 1464, a sculptor named Agostino di Duccio had started it, cut into the front and given up. Antonio Rossellino was brought in to save it, studied what he'd been handed, and walked away. So it stood out in the open, half-shaped and weathering, with a nickname that wasn't meant kindly. They called it the Giant. In 1501, the men who ran the cathedral, the Opera del Duomo, decided to try one more time. They handed the ruined block to a sculptor who was 26 years old, with no workshop big enough to hold it and nothing to prove he could do what two older masters could not. What he pulled out of that stone is the most recognized human figure ever carved. The sculptor was Michelangelo Buonarroti, and the figure he carved is David, the shepherd from the Old Testament who killed the giant Goliath with a stone and a sling. Michelangelo finished him in 1504, which means a man in his 20s spent more than 2 years alone with a block that everyone else had condemned. Now look at the figure itself, and look slowly, because the things that seem wrong are the things he did on purpose. Start with the head. It's too big for the body. So are the hands, and the right hand most of all, hanging at his side, the knuckles and veins swollen far past life size. For a sculptor capable of flawless anatomy, this isn't an error, it's a choice. The cathedral had commissioned the figure to stand high on its roofline, far above the street, where a correctly proportioned head and hands would have shrunk to almost nothing. So Michelangelo enlarged them, building the statue to be read from far below. Then the plan changed. They set David at eye level instead, in Piazza della Signoria, the public square at the heart of the city, and the exaggeration that was meant to disappear never did. Michelangelo didn't choose this block or its dimensions. He inherited it, damage and all. The sculptor who'd abandoned it decades earlier hadn't just left it rough. He had already cut into the marble and gouged a hole into it, low down, between where the legs would later be. In a medium where you can only remove stone, never add it back, that hole was permanent. Whatever figure Michelangelo found in this block had to be built around damage another man had done. The block was shallow too, not nearly as deep front to back as a standing figure this tall would normally need. So the David you picture as fully three-dimensional is in truth pressed into a fairly thin slab of stone, shaped to be read from the front because the marble gave him almost no depth to work with. Now look at the gap between his legs and at the tree stump behind his right ankle. Those aren't only artistic choices, they're solutions. The stance had to open exactly where the old hole already sat, and the stump had to carry the weight of around 6 tons of marble balanced over 2 ankles. Every line of this figure is a negotiation with a block that was handed to him broken. By the time David was finished, Florence had already decided what he meant. The city was a republic, recently rid of the Medici family who had ruled it for 60 years, and it was small, ringed by larger powers that wanted it back under control. Rome, the exiled Medici, the constant threat of being swallowed. A boy who brings down a giant with a single stone was not a neutral subject. It was the city describing itself. A committee was assembled in 1504 to decide where the statue should stand. Leonardo da Vinci sat on it. So did Botticelli. They chose the most political address in Florence, the steps of the Palazzo Vecchio, the seat of the government, where David would stand as a kind of guard. He was turned to face toward Rome, toward the direction the danger came from. People understood the message immediately. On the first night it was moved, men who opposed the new government threw stones at it in the street, and the city had to set a guard over it through the dark. And notice what Michelangelo left out. Every famous David before his Donatello's, Verrocchio's showed the boy after the kill, standing over the severed head of the giant, the fight already won. Michelangelo gave the giant's head no place in the statue at all. He shows you David alone, with the fight not yet decided. So go back to the figure one more time and look at it in two halves. From the waist down, David is calm. The weight rests on one leg, the other eased, the posture loose and almost classical, the contrapposto stance of someone at rest. Now look up. The head is turned sharply to the left, the brow drawn down, the eyes fixed on something far off. The nostrils are flared. The tendons in the neck stand out. The right hand, the oversized one, has tightened around the stone, every vein raised. Over the left shoulder, almost out of sight, his fingers hold the sling. He hasn't thrown it yet. The body is at rest and the face is already at war, and the two do not agree. This is the choice Michelangelo made that no David before him had made. He didn't carve the victory. He carved the instant before it, the moment the boy has seen the giant and has not yet moved. Which leaves you with the only question the statue actually asks. That look on his face, the furrowed brow, the locked stare. Is it the calm of someone who already knows he'll win? Or is it fear, caught and held in marble a second before he finds out?